God chooses his prophets. From Adam progeny God chose prophets, and took their pledge for his revelation, and for carrying his message as their trust. In course of time many people perverted God's trust with them, and ignored his position, and took compeers along with him. Satan turned them away from knowing him, and kept them aloof from his worship. Then God sent his messengers, and series of his prophets to them, to encourage them to fulfill the pledges of his creation, to recall to them his bounties, to exhort them by preaching, to unveil before them the hidden virtues of wisdom, and show them the signs of his omnipotence, namely the sky which is raised over them, the earth that is placed beneath them, means of living that sustain them, deaths that make them die, ailments that turn them old, and incidents that successively betake them. God never allowed his creation to remain without a prophet deputized by him, or a book sent down from him, or a binding argument, or a standing plea. The messengers were such that they did not feel little because of smallness of their number, or of largeness of the number of their falsifiers. Among them was either a predecessor, who would name the one to follow, or the follower who had been introduced by the predecessor. The prophethood of Muhammad, peace be upon him and his progeny. In this way ages passed by, and times rolled on. Fathers passed away, while sons took their places, till God deputized Muhammad, peace be upon him and his progeny, as his prophet, in fulfillment of his promise, and in completion of his prophethood. His pledge had been taken from the prophets, his traits of character were well reputed, and his birth was honorable. The people of the earth at this time were divided in different parties. Their aims were separate, and ways were diverse. They either likened God with his creation, or twisted his names, or turned to else than him, through Muhammad, peace be upon him and his progeny. God guided them out of wrong, and with his efforts took them out of ignorance. Then God chose for Muhammad, peace be upon him and on his progeny, to meet him, selected him for his own nearness, regarded him too dignified to remain in this world, and decided to remove him from this place of trial, so he drew him towards himself with honor. God may shower his blessing on him, and his progeny. The Holy Quran, and Sunnah, the Prophet's holy deeds. But the Prophet left among you the same which other prophets left among their peoples, because prophets do not leave them untended in dark, without a clear path and a standing ensign, namely the book of your Creator, clarifying its permissions and prohibitions, its obligations and discretions, its repealing injunctions and the repealed ones, its permissible matters and compulsory ones, its particulars and the general ones, its lessons and illustrations, its long and the short ones, its clear and obscure ones, detailing its abbreviations and clarifying its obscurities. In it there are some verses whose knowledge is obligatory, and others whose ignorance of by the people is permissible. It also contains what appears to be obligatory according to the book, but its repeal is signified by the Prophet action, Sunnah, or that which appears compulsory according to the Prophet action, but the book allows not following it, or there are others which are obligatory in a given time, but not so after that time. Its prohibitions also differ. Some are major, regarding which there exists the threat of fire, the hell, and others are minor, for which there are prospects of forgiveness. There are also those of which a small portion is also acceptable to God, but they are capable of being expanded. In this very sermon, he spoke about Hajj. God has made obligatory upon you the pilgrimage, Hajj, to his sacred house, which is the turning point for the people, who go to it as beasts, or pigeons go towards spring water. God the glorified made it a sign of their supplication before his greatness, and their acknowledgement of his dignity. He selected from among his creation those who on listening to his call responded to it, and testified his word. They stood in the position of his prophets, and resembled his angels who surround the divine throne, maintain all the benefits of performing his worship, and hastening towards his promised forgiveness. God the glorified made it his sacred house, an emblem for Islam, and an object of respect for those who turn to it. He made obligatory its pilgrimage, and laid down its claim for which he held you responsible to discharge it. Thus God the glorified said, "And for God, it is incumbent upon mankind, the pilgrimage to the house, for those who can afford to journey thither, and who evidenceth this verily, God is self-sufficiently independent of the world."